Julian, welcome back to the podcast.
Hiya, Stephen. All good.
Awesome, awesome. Do you know what? We've talked a lot about culture. We've talked a lot about company vision. But for people who haven't met you before, what did Julian Church and Associates actually do?
Okay. We are construction consultants. I
Okay.
think it's the simplest way of doing it. I'd use a tagline saying we measure, we manage, and we implement.
Love
That
it.
picks up our sort of services in terms of what we're doing. So we're quantity surveyors, we're
Yep.
project managers, project coordinators, call it what way you like, with
Yep.
that, which incorporates contract administration. And then we provide health and safety
Okay.
services in terms of principal designer or CDM advisor, as that has developed over the years.
Okay.
So in essence, in terms of quantity surveying, I'm a first off trained quantity surveyor.
Yeah.
So I worked from the early 90s up in London.
Yeah.
Did all my professional training in London. From that, then I came down and worked on the south coast in Brighton for a company. From which time I got to a point in early 2000s whereby I set up Julian Church and Associates. So 2001, I decided that I was going to set up on my own, and with that, I've provided the QS and PM ever since the start of that. And subsequently, we've incorporated the health and safety as the world has developed.
Yeah.
Quantity surveying wise, we go from your earliest feasibility all the way through to your post completion 12 months defects. We can do lifecycle costing if that's what you want, but it's not much call for that in terms of a lot of what we do. But we work through various sectors. I'd say 80% of our work year on year is hospitality.
Right.
On average.
Yeah.
We work in retail, we work in health, we work in what I would term community. So that's more your council type work, community centres and various depots and bits from there. So, big tin sheds if you want us to. Through the sort of health stuff, hospital and hospice, that sort of side of things. All the way through there, and that's through a quantity surveying role and project management and CDM if that's what your vocation. So really, what I'm looking to sort of look at there is that we positively advise you in terms of cost for quantity surveying. Okay, and that's managed and it's forecast and it's delivered, and that will include some of your client direct type orders that come through as well when we're working in hospitality. So your furniture right the way down to bits and pieces on the bar equipment and that sort of thing. If you're, in terms of project management and what we do there, I would split it in sort of three. I'd say it's project management, it's project coordination, and it's project monitoring.
Okay.
When you're looking at pure project management, we will employ people. We had a job last year with French fashion retailer IKKS.
Yeah. Saw that on your Instagram.
They were looking to come back to the UK. They'd previously traded here, but hadn't done for a number of years. They engaged through us, through some of our colleagues that we've got in Belgium and Holland.
Yep.
Where they've been doing work together. We provided them with a cost, and then from that cost, we actively managed that as a cost plan contract, effectively what I would term pure project management, in that we were actually employing the contractor, we were employing all the consultants, we were employing all the specialists in terms of those jobs to go and deliver. That is what I would term the pure project management. And from that, we took responsibility for the methodology, for the programming, for the design, implementation, the whole project width, if you like, then the requirements of their business plan to come back to this country. In terms of what I would say we generally do, though, is probably more project coordination.
Okay.
And in that's from an insurance definition, is that we will manage the process, but we don't employ the people.
Right. Okay.
The contracts remain direct with the client. With that, the world has changed more and more in terms of what we're doing. When I first trained back in the, as I say, the early 90s and that sort of thing, late 80s, early 90s, the architects took a much more of a lead role in providing contract administration.
Right. Okay.
And I think the world's changed these days, that Quantity Surveyor, from our cost point of view, we're taking much more of the process delivery and
Yeah.
implementation. And with that, we're administer a JCT contract quite happily. Well, JCT contracts are pretty much industry standard for the building industry.
Right. I was about to say, what's one of those?
The joint contract tribunal contract. There are other forms, but we prefer to work under a JCT.
Okay.
And with that and in its implementation, we will administer that whole process on your behalf as the client, or for the client.
I'm sat here thinking, geez, I didn't realize you did all of that, you know. And I'm thinking, I look at my industry and I'm like, well, I'm glad we don't have to do all that work, because there's a lot there that you're responsible for.
Yep.
And that's the first word that came to my head was responsibility, responsibility, responsibility.
I'd like to think that we do take responsibility.
Yeah. It sounds like you
In
have
terms
to.
of what we are. I think there is a thing out there where people seem to be trying to make noise.
Okay.
Can I say? And they're very noisy.
Yeah.
But they don't actually, when you get down to it, do very much.
Yep.
Okay. And they're reliant on others to actually implement and actually do. What I would say in our brand of coordination of management is we take responsibility. With that, we will actually manage and run.
And that comes into something that we talked about in the previous podcasts. You take responsibility, you manage. Ultimately, from a softer side, you actually care about what you're doing and you do it. And
I truly get invested in what our end product should be. I choose the type of people that I want to work with.
Yeah.
In some respects, and I think we've touched on that before. We want to work with like-minded companies in terms of what we do. But once we invest in that, we are fully invested in you, and we're trying to actually deliver the best solution for your project.
So you talked about quantity surveying, we talked about project management, and just touch on what you brought the health and safety in recently.
Well, the health and safety side came through over the years. I used to employ other people to do it remotely. It got to a point where we brought it in. It's very complementary to what we do in terms of management and coordination. The latest CDM regs changed from to the when I say the latest, it's 8 years old now, but
Right.
to 2015 regs for the CDM changed the role of and introduced the role of principal designer. Now you might say, well, isn't that the architect? But really, the principal designer is actually a title that is responsible for the delivery, if you like, of the health and safety role within the project.
Right.
Okay, so it focuses on the needs of the particular project. In terms of not only the construction but also the maintenance of that afterwards. It's the record keeping of as-built drawings and specifications and documentation and consideration and all of those inputs which are important to that sort of health and safety role. And we will principally work as a principal designer, CDM coordinator, as it might have been formerly known, or even the original name was planning supervisor. Now those roles have developed and taken on more, use that word, responsibility, but they've taken on more impact and requirement as it's actually developed through the CDM regs as they've been revised. But under the latest role, we're quite happy to run as principal designers for work which we are regularly engaged.
And I'm sat here, Julian, thinking, Julian knows that I want to build my house in the next few years. There is no way that I want any of that responsibility. I have to bring someone in because I wouldn't know about it. I just thinking, we'll buy a bit of land and that's the house I want. We'll pop that on it. And I'm like, just even though having this conversation, it's like this, and you need a professional for something like that.
Yeah, by default, it'll fall back on the client if you don't appoint someone else to do so. So,
I've got your number.
But we'll also take up a role of what they term CDM advisor. So we will
Okay.
advise people across their requirements and the actual process of the project, but not necessarily be principal designer if that's what they want. Um, and we work with a spirit of collaboration
Yeah.
in what we do, and no more so than with that CDM role that we take.
Yeah.
Um, it's about working with colleagues and partners and having an understanding of what we're doing. And once we've got that level of coordination management requirement, that
Yeah.
then gives us the background and the basis for us to actually provide all of those services.
And am I right in saying you provide these services across hospitality, retail, private builds, and things like that? What is the whole range that you cover?
Um, right. Within hospitality, we'll do restaurants, bars, cafes, nightclubs.
Yep.
You go through. In terms of retail, we will provide all of those services across any retail fit out.
Okay.
We've worked at Westfield, we've worked at Stratford and White City, we've
Yep.
worked at various places. When we were working in Scandinavia and Belgium,
Yep.
we took on like an advisor role, if you like, but we weren't actually principal designers. There's a slightly different interpretation of the EU regs over there.
Okay.
Um, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Um, the experience of working in Holland is people were dropping things down and that sort of thing from the floor above. And I said, look, in the UK, you wouldn't be allowed to do that in that format. You're not supposed to be doing it here now. And it was about, no, once you've actually given the operative the education
Yeah.
and the PPE, if they don't want to wear it or if they don't want to act in that manner, they take responsibility
Yeah. Makes
rather than
sense.
the corporate sort of side. So
Yeah.
there's different levels, but in the UK we're a corporate responsibility.
Gotcha.
Um, so yes, we're working in that. We're working the retail side, as I say. Health, I'm happy on the sort of hospice roles, smaller wards, that sort of
Yeah.
thing, uh, to provide that input across all three services.
Yeah.
I would limit it anything over about 6 or 7 stories these days. I
Okay.
would suggest that we're probably not the right people for.
Yeah. It's good to know.
Um, because the latest changes on the building regs that
Yeah.
have come in have got a big input into managing that process and the impacts of what's on the existing building as much as what's on the impact of where you are.
Right.
And I would
Okay.
say that as it stands at the moment, we're better off not doing that stuff over 6 stories.
Right.
But having said that, there is time and in the future maybe
Yeah.
it all comes down to individual merits. Community buildings, we work across a range of council stuff. So we've done activity centres, we've done community centres, we've done storage centres,
Yeah.
um, and we're currently working down in Eastleigh for them on the second job that we've actually done with Eastleigh Council. We're effectively
Yeah.
doing a load of civils works. Now we're quite happy
Okay.
to work in there as QSs. We're
Yeah.
quite happy to provide a level of CDM if they've wanted it. We're not actually engaged on that one, but it's probably not our skill set necessarily for large scale infrastructure work to do the project management on that one. So sometimes we do step back,
Mm.
but it's knowing our boundaries. The stuff that we're very familiar with, and we do, hospitality is 80% of our workload.
Yeah.
So across that, we're always happy to repeat.
Awesome. So what's the steps forward? Is there anything you're going to add to your skill set, or is it, you know what, this is what we're awesome at, this is what we're driving forward with?
I think that in terms of what we do and the niches of sectors of works that we actually
Yeah.
work in as well, we I would stick certainly just into the QS in PM and CDM from an inside point of view. I'm quite happy to advocate other services and other companies and
Yep.
take them on board. In terms of the project management role, we even took the construction on. But
Yeah.
in terms of design or building surveying or building control or civil engineering, I'm quite happy to advocate for other people that we would recommend to work with. And whether you, as a client body or whatever format the project is taking, they want to employ them direct or not.
Gotcha. So how would you prefer people to get in contact with you to talk about project management, quantity surveying, etc.?
You've got our website, you've got my email, you've got my telephone number. Let's not forget LinkedIn. I probably do above average on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
You can contact me through Twitter. You can contact me through all the various social media forms. I like to talk to people. Pick up the phone.
Yeah.
I'm always good to have a chat, and you know that work sector in terms of what we do, it evolves and it revolves around. And if you've got a project, if I can't do it, I'll always happily recommend someone else who can. But I'd
Yeah.
like to think that we're the first stop for you.
Awesome. Julian, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast again. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time, Stephen.